Good morning, Tiffy and Bethany. I'm going to try to do this as fast as possible. I read Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen. Northanger Abbey was the first of Jane Austen's novels, and it's kind of a spoof to all the Gothic novels that were a big hit at that time. We start out with Catherine Morland, saying that she was a wild, loud, tomboyish child, and when she grew into her teen years, she started to become a little more pretty. She was interested in several things, but never really had the attention to stay focused on those things for more than a week. I can relate. Her family is thinking, you know what, we live in Fullerton, and there's really not enough suitable young men for you to actually marry. So in comes the Allens, Mr. and Mrs. Allen, their neighbors, saying, hey, we're going to go on a vacay to Bath. Want to come with? Well, hell yeah. Catherine jumps at the opportunity because she's pretty much had a sheltered life and has never left her home. They go to Bath, and it is really boring for the next few chapters because they babble on and on about how they do not know anybody. And apparently if you don't know somebody to introduce you to somebody else that they know, you're not really supposed to talk to them. It's considered impolite. Finally, they go to this ball where Catherine meets a young man named Henry Tilney, whom she's instantly smitten with, and I must confess I was a little too because he's just so damn charming. Wanted to speak to her like a real person, you know, like you and me would have a conversation, but instead he charms her with his wit by being a doofus and going, oh, well, how are you enjoying your time in Bath? And then doing this cute little bit where he was saying, I bet you'll go home and write in your journal saying, I met this ridiculously weird young man today. But what he really wanted was, I met this really wonderful man today. I hope to see him again, which was really sweet. In the next few days, Catherine goes wandering about Bath trying to find Henry again, but he is nowhere to be found. Mrs. Allen luckily finally meets somebody that she knew from a long time ago named Mrs. Thorpe. Blah blah blah, a lot of really boring chatter ensues where Mrs. Allen is talking about the finery and how cheap her clothing is, and then Mrs. Thorpe bragging about how gorgeous her children are. In walks Mrs. Thorpe's children. The eldest daughter, Isabella, and Catherine instantly become best buddies, and they spend their time gossiping, talking about Henry Tilney, and reading their beloved Gothic novels. They go to another ball. James Morland, which is Catherine's brother, comes in with John Thorpe, which is Isabella's brother. The two of them were friends because they both went to Oxford together. Now they both kind of pair off in opposite directions, James with Isabella and John with Catherine. James and Isabella instantly are like that. John tries his hardest to woo Catherine, but Catherine's kind of like, you know what, you're kind of a bit arrogant and braggish. John has the weird impression that apparently Catherine is absolutely in love with him, which is totally false. Finally, Henry Tilney shows up again at the ball with his sister Eleanor, and Catherine wants to get closer to Henry, so she decides, I'm going to be best friends with Eleanor, and she tries to speak with them and hang out with them, but of course John Thorpe is being a real pain in the ass and kind of dragging her away with Isabella and James because they're like, hey, let's go on a picnic, hey, let's go on a carriage ride. And the whole time Catherine is kind of thinking, God damn it, I'm trying to make plans with my future love and his sister. Finally, John leaves for a few weeks. Here comes Henry's older brother, Captain Frederick Tilney, who was just in from his regiment, and he's hanging out, and he starts flirting with Isabella. Shame on him, but Isabella starts flirting back after realizing how modest an income that James makes. What a bitch. Eleanor, who realizes that Catherine has a thing for her brother, invites her to come to Northanger Abbey, which is where their father is, General Tilney, and he's the clergyman there. On the way there, she imagines all this crazy fun happenings that would be seen in her Gothic novels, such as, oh, I bet the first night there it's going to be dark and stormy, and I'm going to find keys to secret passageways and a mysterious bureau full of bones or whatever. You know, imagining all this crazy stuff. When she gets there, she's sorely disappointed because it's very ordinary. While she's there, she becomes obsessed with the idea that the reason Henry and Eleanor's mother is dead is because she imagines that General Tilney murdered her. She steps over the boundaries and she ends up going into the mother's chambers to try and find clues as to how she was murdered. Henry catches her, is a bit pissed off that she would imagine such a crazy thing, and he scolds her a lot, and she's absolutely mortified. The whole time, the general has no idea what's going on, but he keeps hinting at Catherine saying, hey, you want to marry my son? Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. He leaves and then returns suddenly saying, get the hell out of my house. And Catherine returns to her home in Fullerton, extremely disheartened and completely embarrassed. She's very mopey and upset because she probably just lost the love of her life. Suddenly, Henry comes galloping in, and he told her that the reason for his father's rudeness was because he met up with John Thorpe, the little Dickens that seemed to think that Catherine was in love with him, which she was not. He found out her true feelings for Henry, so he told a lie to Henry's father, saying that Catherine was absolutely destitute, completely dirt poor, and he did not want to sink his son in a bad marriage like that. And so, upon finding out the truth, he gave them their blessing. Henry galloped over to her house and proposed to her, and the book ends with their marriage. Happy ending. La la.